Well, Brandon, let's move on into our next topic. And what we're looking at now, still staying in the SEC. Really, we said this is a coaching podcast. Really, it's an SEC podcast. And we're looking now at the Florida job, as a lot of these jobs in the SEC, like we said, got coaches fired. They are now open. We talked about this one last week. Chip Kelly was thought to be replacing Jim McElwain in Florida. Did not become the case. Dan Mullen comes home, leaves the Bulldogs of Mississippi State, is now the head coach of the Florida Gators. I will ask you plain and simple, can Mullen turn around Florida football?
Yeah, I think he can. I think he can because he's been at a program, Mississippi State. It's been one of those. I mean, let's remember Dak Prescott. When he was there, that had a lot of eyes on the Mississippi State program. So I don't think that this is going to be new territory to Dan Mullen. And some people may say, well, Florida, they tried to go out and get Chip Kelly. They couldn't do it. They try and go out and they try and get Frost. They couldn't do it from UCF. And after 0-2, they go and they try and go what some people would call the quote-unquote the safe pick with Dan Mullen. But I don't think Dan Mullen's a safe pick. I think he's a good pick. And I think he's also a really good fit for this team. And this kind of goes back to the last segment that we talked about in terms of Jimbo Fisher and what he can bring for a quarterback position. I think Dan Mullen can do the same thing. And I say that, again, using the example of Dak Prescott and how he was able to come into his own as a quarterback there at Mississippi State and becoming not just a runner, but a passer as well, and an effective one. And I think that's what Dan Mullen can bring here to Florida. What's going on wrong right now with Florida? Everything. I think that
everything.
This is one of those, there's not one thing that you can put a finger on it and go, let's fix that. But there's a lot of different things that you can add to make it better. So the offense, first and foremost, you need to figure that offense out, and you need to figure out who's going to be your quarterback moving forward. I think Mullen can do that. He's a really good guy to be there working with that quarterback. I think that this is really good because Scott Strickland who's the AD now at Florida, was the athletic director at Mississippi State for a little bit as well. So these two guys know each other. They're friends. They've worked well together. I think that's also going to bode really, really well for this relationship here at Florida. Dan Mullen is here. He's here to stay, and I think he's going to turn this program around.
Well, and if there were any quarterback that if Florida could have gotten, I'd be like, that's a good pickup. Dan Mullen would be the guy, because one thing, and I'm looking at a graphic here from ESPN, when Mullen was with the Gators from 2005 to 2008 as offensive coordinator and quarterback coach, best SEC record, 44-9, most points per game, 36.3, most yards per play in the SEC, 6.5, and the best QBR at 77.3. Also won 2 BCS titles then. However, the grain of salt that I'm going to take with that before I use that as a point is you do have to understand from 2006 to 2008, he did have Tim Tebow, who was a Heisman caliber quarterback. True. And I mean, I'm not trying to use that to take away from Dan Mullen, but it goes to my point. If Dan Mullen can bring in the right guy to be his quarterback, because I don't think that quarterback is on the roster right now for Florida, if he can bring in that right guy, he can do good things with an offense. Look at what he did at Mississippi State with a Dak Prescott. Nick Fitzgerald looked really good this year, although he's not on the level of a Dak Prescott, or I would even say, well, Tim Tebow, but I would even say a Dak Prescott. That's the way I meant to say that. But that's a big thing with Dan Mullen that's going to be tied to his success. How quickly can he either develop a quarterback if he thinks it's on the roster? I personally don't. Or if he can bring in that guy to be, this is my quarterback and this is the one that I can then mold into the quarterback I want.
Well, a couple of things going off of that is, since he has served with Urban Meyer, he's served for the best, he's coached with the best, and he understands the pressure at Florida. I think that's also really big. We talk about these jobs and you know, whether it's Florida, whether it's Tennessee, whether it's any of the, there's immense pressure coming with them. There's immense pressure because there's also been immense distress lately with how the team has performed, and then outside factors as well. I think that Dan Mullen is a guy who comes in, he knows how to deal with this. He knows how to deal with this pressure. It's not going to get to him. He is someone who has always seemed at Mississippi State very cool, calm, and collected. And that's what they need. They need a guy who's going to be cool, who's going to be calm. And in situations when things are getting tough, you stay calm. You don't take the Brian Kelly and get hot and bothered underneath the collar and start blaming anyone under the sun except for yourself. I do believe that this is a really good pick. He's been one of the guys who's been regarded as one of the best SEC coaches, and I know that's a large pool to choose from because there's a lot of really good SEC coaches, but when you're regarded as one of the top ones, that says a lot. That says a lot when you're in the same similar category to a Nick Saban for what his programs have been able to do and everything that has come along with that. It's just very, very important for this Florida program to get off the ground fast and to bring in some good recruits. You said it. It's, can you get the right guy? Are you able to bring in the right guy? And I had mentioned it earlier, Florida being one of the best areas to be able to recruit. There's so much talent. It's when you're SEC country and then you're Florida, that is a spot where no one should be going, they weren't able to get the right guy. What do you mean they weren't able to get the right guy? It's Florida. You know, that's kind of one of those. So I think that's going to help with the region. That's definitely going to help. Here's an interesting thing. Can Mullen boost Florida's offensive fortunes? This is something on ESPN. Well, points per game. Since Dan Mullen's first season at Mississippi State in 2009, here's how the Bulldogs' offense compares to Florida's during that span. So points per game. For Mississippi State, 30.1. Florida, 26.4. Total yards per game, Mississippi State, 420. Florida, 353. Pass yards per game, 220 at Mississippi State. Florida, 190. And then rush yards per game, Mississippi State 200, Florida 162. Now that could mean absolutely squat diddly. If you put a lot in stats, that means a whole lot for you. And if you don't, obviously, then you don't care. But I still think that's interesting because his teams, no matter Florida, good or bad, no matter they won their side of the conference or didn't, Mississippi State was still putting up better numbers since Mullen's first season back in 2009 than Florida did in that same time.
Well, and the thing I was going to ask you is looking at what they have. Malik Zaire, throw him to the side. He's done.
He's gone.
He's done. He's a senior.
And I just, disclaimer on that one, what a failed senior year.
Well, it's the same as Everett Golson.
I know. When
he left,
I would have said the same, and I said the same. I said the same thing about him. What a failure.
Didn't Everett Golson leave for Florida State too? So they both left the Golden Domers for a team in Florida and fizzled.
It just didn't work out. It just didn't work out.
I think Everett Golson's was better than Malik Zaire, but that's not saying much.
Just it's a shame because you want to see these young guys have a really good, strong end to their collegiate career and then be able to go somewhere. It just didn't work.
And look at Deshaun Kaiser. He's in the NFL. Look at who won that battle between Zaire and Kaiser. But the point I was going to make is going into Mullen's first year at Florida, and I know we're going to talk about this about a half a year from now when we're looking at SEC previews and we're previewing Florida coming into next season. You've got a choice. You've got the injured this year with a shoulder injury, Luke Del Rio. He'll be a senior if he comes back. You'll have Felipe Frank, who this year's a freshman, will be coming into a sophomore year. If you're with Dan Mullen now as the head coach, two-part question. First off, which one would you go with if you were Dan Mullen, or which one would you be favoring right now? And two, because Frank's the younger one, can he develop Frank into the quarterback that he wants in a quarterback for Frank's junior, senior year?
Your first question.
Give me the first one first. If you were Dan Mullen right now, who would you be leaning towards of the guy for next year? Would you want to go with a young sophomore quarterback, or I'm going to work with the senior for my first year coming in?
Who's the other guy?
Luke Del Rio.
Oh, yeah. Luke, you know what?
Blackjack's son.
I'm sorry. I forget he's still there.
Yeah, the shoulder injury. That's what I was saying.
Yeah, I wasn't listening, obviously. I was thinking and reading about something else. That's what I was saying. we have to, as they've said, I don't want to use this, but I'm going to use this. Bronco fans in the NFL, they want to know about Paxton Lynch. We don't know about him, so we have to find out about him. Felipe Franks, he played some time, but
9 touchdowns, 8 INTs, almost 1,500 yards.
I still don't think that he was given a real good
chance.
I don't. And people can agree or disagree. They can say, "No, we saw what he was, and he's not good." I still think that you need to give it some time and truly have a realistic quarterback battle between Del Rio and Felipe Franks and see who's going to win that out and see who maybe you are able to bring in. That's going to be the most important thing in my mind. And then for your second question, what was the second part?
Can Mullen develop Frank? Because Frank is the younger one. Can he develop Felipe Franks into the quarterback he wants for Frank's junior, senior year, which would be Mullen's second and third year?
He absolutely can, and the reason being is because Mullen, one of the things that he's done, he's worked with run-heavy quarterbacks, as you've seen Nick Fitzgerald, the current guy over there at Mississippi State, and then he's worked
Tebow, Dak Prescott.
I was just going with his recent one since I'd already used the Dak Prescott, and you had already talked about Tim Tebow, so people are like, "You're talking about the same ones."
Nick Fitzgerald fits in there.
Nick Fitzgerald, I think, would fit that mold, and then he's also dealt with more traditional style passers. The thing that always sets him apart is that he is able to fit his systems around his quarterbacks and not the other way around.
Not have the quarterback be like you're a triangle peg and I'm trying to fit you into a square hole.
Exactly. And one of the things that he was quoted saying in the summer was, quote, "It's much easier for me to adapt than for them to adapt."
Because he's older.
What?
I'm thinking because, like, I'm looking at that comment, it's much easier for me to adapt than them to adapt because...
It's not because he's older.
Well, I would
he's
say...
the coach.
I know that.
These guys are younger.
But I'm looking at that, too. Like, because they're younger and they're still developing and maturing as guys in general, as people, it's a lot easier for a coach to say, you know what, I'll adapt because I have... Well, older guys, you hope, have a little bit more maturity. I have a little bit more knowledge to where I can mold mine around him rather than saying, "Hey, you're a young kid. You got to fit my system. I know you're maturing, got a lot going on in your life, but you got to fit my system."
Yeah.
To where he can say, "No, you're you. I'll fit around you. I'll
exactly.
kind of form around you."
That's a good head coach. That's someone who's going to be a successful head coach. He already is. But that's who's going to be a successful head coach at Florida, is that if you're willing to do that, if you're willing to fit your system around the quarterback and not try and fit your quarterback around your system, that's going to be huge for you. Also, an SEC West assistant coach had mentioned that when you watch him coach with his offenses, you see real football stuff, not trickery stuff. So that, I think that speaks a lot to him too. There's some coaches who are really big into, let's do some of these trick plays, let's try and be fancy and stuff like that, whereas he's just more into, let's run some good schemes offensively. Let's keep them off their toes and stuff like that, not necessarily with trickery, but with just a good scheme. And I think that's really, really important that, again, Florida, they need some life breathed back into this program, and they need some new faces, and this is really good for them. But one thing they don't need is to go and be all of a sudden now, okay, we're going to try all these trick plays and stuff to really get us going. No, we're just going to come with a good scheme. We're going to come with a good style of offense. We're going to hit you with a good defense, and we're going to be changing things up. We're going to try and keep you off balance. That's what they need. They don't need to go too far out of the box, just enough.
Well, and the one thing I am looking at that'll make I don't think he has a fight if he does stay, because he could decommit now that, McElwain ain't there and now it's Dan Mullen. But as of right now, Long Beach quarterback, who's the third best pro quarterback according to 24/7 Sports and the sixth best recruit in the state of California, 32 overall, Matt Corral right now, is a pro-style quarterback that they have committed to them. So right now the quarterbacks look like it would be the senior in Luke Del Rio, the sophomore in Felipe Frank, and then the freshman coming in with Matt Corral. Now, everything could change with Corral. He could say, you know what, I'm taking away my commitment, reopening my recruitment because Mullen's the head coach. I don't see him doing that. Why wouldn't you want to work with a coach like Mullen unless he was really tied to the hip of McElwain and really wanted to work with him? But the thing I wanted to bring up about Florida and about McElwain and now Mullen moving over is, you know, it's one thing that now, I mean, we talked about it in the SEC, or not the SEC, the Texas A&M segment, and it fits here, and I feel like you got to bring that. We bring this up every time, or I do at least. You know what could make Mullen a little bit more successful with even a mediocre quarterback? Guess who he does not have to play until the SEC title game, unless they play in the season Auburn or Alabama. You get to stay away from both of those guys now. You get to stay away from Gus Malzahn and Nick Saban. And it's like, well, yeah, we played them in the season. Even if you lose to them once, you're not fighting them to get to the SEC title game. I know Kirby Smart's building he's building the Alabama of the East in Georgia, it seems. But the East has always been where it's like last year, Georgia, Florida, Tennessee were the three teams we talked about. Bless you.
I am sorry. That really just came right on.
It looks like with Florida now, Mullen being there, he doesn't have to go right at Nick Saban just to get to the SEC title game.
There's not enough you can say about how big that is. Mm-hmm. How big that is for him. When you don't,
but you got to deal with Kirby Smart.
No, trust. I realize that it doesn't, just because you don't have those two doesn't make it easy.
Yeah,
but it certainly kind of takes a little bit of weight off the shoulders, knowing that you don't have to deal with them in the regular season. I mean, that's big, but I still see if Mullen is able to do what he would like to do. And again, I think that what he does, and him coming in here, what we need to all realize, and what even Florida fans need to realize too, is something that Tom Herman said after week 1 this year of being the Texas head coach. This wasn't all going to be finished and done and better after week 1. He said, for anyone who was thinking that you're wrong and that you're delusional, because that's not what was going to happen. We clearly still have a long way to go, and we're going to get there, but it wasn't going to be ready, and it wasn't going to be perfect after week 1. I think that Florida and Florida fans still need to have the same type of mentality with this. It's that everything may not be hunky-dory week 1. You may not be ready to fully compete against every single person. Are you in a better spot? Oh, I think you're going to be in a much better spot. Dan Mullen is a good coach. I think you ever heard the term when you underpromise and then you overdeliver, Ricky?
That's what you want to do.
That's what you want to do. You want to come in, you want to have expectations. You don't want to be too high. But when you meet your expectations and then blow past them, go, yeah, we expected we were going to be this good.
Let me put it this way, and I know this is a kind of really out there example, but it fits to what you just said. It reminds me of when I was in college, and we would set up for a music concert. We would always ask the band director, how many chairs do you want? Do you want us to fill up the whole gym? And you go, no, don't fill up the whole gym. We're only going to put this many, because his thought process was, and it's true, it's always better to put out less chairs and then have to bring more out
all the time,
because then it looks good. It looks like, oh, look at how many people we got. We need more chairs.
Yes.
We need more chairs. Or if you put them out and that's all the chairs you have and you don't want to put any more out, then to have people standing, it's like, ooh, look at how many people we had. We needed standing room only. So it kind of like, that's what I think of when you just said that, was that same thing. Don't put out too many chairs. You can always bring more chairs out. But any final things that you think we haven't touched on with Mullen and Florida and this whole signing for both Florida and Mullen?
Well, I would just say again, I really think that Florida fans, you got a very good coach in Dan Mullen. I think he's going to be the right guy to lead your program in the right direction. Well,
this is where you guys come in. Let us know what you guys think down below in the comments section. Can Dan Mullen turn this program around? Will he? And also, who do you think that quarterback is going to be next season? We're going to make those predictions already. You going with Felipe Frank? You going with Luke Del Rio, the son of Black Jack Del Rio in the NFL? Let us know what you guys think down below in the comment section.